I just found it was interesting.
Well, it's enormously interesting. And, of course, you and I have talked off the air and on the air about all we've ever really asked for is a dialogue and a debate over these issues. And if you're not willing to debate and you reject somebody because there's one thing that they don't agree with you, I think that's so completely against advancing understanding and advancing knowledge and people coming together and resolving issues and so on. I couldn't agree with you more.
It was, of course, I've been through it with people in completely different fields than anything having to do with climate. So I'm used to it, but every time it happens, and it happens intermittently and every so often, I'm stunned. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're not capable of having a conversation about your particular offering because one part of what you're trying to accomplish, I don't agree with your paradigm or your research or your details on it. Who cares? You're still a guest.
Right.
You're still invited to speak your mind and speak your experience and speak your view. No one's cutting you off, but oh my God. So when she said to me, well, we don't see the world the same way. I said, how do you know how I see the world? You don't even know me. You haven't spent even 5 minutes talking to me. And it doesn't matter that I love the oceans, that I love land, that I love the mountains, that I love clean air, that I love clean water, that I love animals and people, and I'm for clean agriculture and clean forest. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but you know, Kim, one of the things where I confront this in climate every once in a while is that people ask about things like the groundhog. And, and of course, a lot of people dismiss that, and particularly so-called modern-day science, that this is... The reality is that the groundhog is based on empirical observations of people and farmers over hundreds of years. And one of the things that amused me is that the Aboriginals across northern Canada, the Dene and the Cree and the Inuit peoples, use the northern lights to forecast the weather. And they get surprisingly accurate forecasts with that. Our own official government, Environment Canada, says, oh, it's all rubbish. It has nothing to do with the weather. Yet now, of course, we know that the northern lights are related to sunspots and related to changes in solar activity and so on and so forth. So one of the things that I've learned, and by the way, we should do a whole program on weather folklore.
That would be great. That'd be fascinating.
Right, and because and by the way, the groundhog thing, just to finish that briefly, that actually started in Russia where they used the badger. And in parts of Europe, they used the badger. But when they came to North America, of course, they didn't have a badger, so they substituted the groundhog. And but it's based on that middle latitude observations. But one of the things that I've learned is not to discard anything out of hand. That everything bears some examination, and that you're really just being prejudicial when you take that kind of attitude and approach to things.
Well, also, when you're doing an intake to do an interview or to have a broadcast discussion, it was proper for me to say, you know what? I don't see it that way. I see it as a cycle. There's no problem talking about it. I wanted to be clear that based on my 300 hours of research, I'm clear that it's a cycle. I don't feel like there's anything to stop. You know from my shows that I'm for the responsible use of the environment. I'm for stewardship of the environment. I don't like pollutants. I don't like unnecessary chemicals that are toxic, but that's for everything. And so what? And all of a sudden, it's bizarre.
Yeah. But that's part of this modern mentality that if you're not with me, you must be against me. And we see it in politics. We see it in every aspect of today's life. And it's so divisive, that approach to things. And of course, you also see it in the whole environmental movement, that if you dare to question any part of it, you're immediately in favor of pollution and not caring about the environment. And so people, then you actually see them on television. It says underneath environmentalist. Well,
do you know what she said to me? So you don't agree with the 20,000 scientists that represent the IPCC? I said, I'm not going to get into a long pre-production conversation with you. You're welcome to listen to my 15 plus shows on climate. It really does involve a commitment to the whole caboodle, the whole thing, not just what one scientist said or 20,000, feel pressure to say or who in academia is being bought. One thing I did say to her, I said, you need to be willing to be a student and to be wrong. And until you're willing to be wrong, you're not approachable and you're not going to learn anything. What you're doing is operating an agenda instead of really being excited to learn and to see. Because when I came to the subject of climate, I was absolutely unwilling before I did my first show. And only because I was doing my first show did it cause me to roll up my sleeves, forget what I had ingested after all those years, and be willing to look and read and ask the questions and meet the people and bring people together and look at a whole systems approach to what is this?
But of course, one of the things that's happening is that, first of all, where we mentioned the environmental movement, it's become the new religion. And science has become, and we could talk about this at some point on a program, but science, in defeating religion, has become more dogmatic than the religion it replaced. And of course, the problem with religions is that there's a point at which it's a blind faith.
Exactly.
And that's the danger with what's going on with her response to you. And
yeah. And the thing is, it's not about fighting over it. The thing is, if somebody said to me, the 15 shows that you did and all the people that you interviewed and all these key pieces, et cetera, that were discussed, I have something that will derail all that, or all that is whatever. I might be willing to listen, even though I wouldn't necessarily at first accept that, because I love to learn and I'm receptive. But when I look into the conditions for transmitting accurate information to the public, and I look at what's happening to the public and how the public is being hypnotized by the mainstream media networks and the agenda and the propaganda, it's so pervasive. When you have to take over the entire media to drive an agenda, to me, that's devilishness at foot. And then to be able to hijack almost the entire environmental movement and completely hypnotize us so that we can't separate the wheat from the chaff. Now that is a slick agenda. That is slick.
Yes.
That is devilishness. That is some slick stuff. But I'll tell you, I never thought in a million years, Tim, that I would stand up and say, I've looked at every aspect of this. These are the areas that are incomplete information being delivered to the public, and stand and say it. And yet, I'm not involved in politics, and I don't want to be involved in politics. But when I hear people getting scared and freaked out, oh, the seas are rising to the nth degree, all they remember is Al Gore's movie, the ocean's getting higher and higher and higher. And I'm not saying that we're not going to have some type of major weather changes in the next 20, 25 years, or more earthquakes and more volcanoes and, a lot of complexity around the world. But the scare that has been transmitted, the fear, propaganda is so huge. It's so unbelievable. And I'll tell you what, I'll bet you a lot of wonderful people, good-hearted people that are tuned in, bought it just like me.
Let's flip that back to the oceans again, because and the fact, as you mentioned, that Gore, with those computer animations of Florida going underwater and New York City going underwater, although some might think that's a good idea, urban renewal, but there's a reason why he made that such a big part of his movie, because people are afraid of the oceans generally. When you think of the tsunamis,
absolutely,
and people's fear of drowning, we generally we have a deep respect for water,
and there's mystery to it too, don't you think?
Oh, a huge mystery,
tremendous mystery,
huge mystery. Yeah. And I mean, if you think about them setting off from Europe or wherever they did, even on the Kon-Tiki-type rafts and so on. And by the way, there's a wonderful book by Thor Heyerdahl who speaks to all of the things that you and I have just been talking about, and it's called Early Man and the Oceans.
Oh, that'd be a great book.
Now Heyerdahl is a great hero of mine in that not only for the Kon-Tiki expedition, where he had a hypothesis and he went out and tested it, put his life on the line on that balsa raft, but his idea about early man in the oceans is the argument that people have been on the oceans and taking great long voyages for much longer than history allows. And